it assumes a red ocean perspective, and so leads managers to devalue innovation and unintentionally trigger price wars. One of my favorite business books is Blue Ocean Strategy. In some ways, market-based pricing is the pricing model for red oceans. My experience, however, is that market-based pricing often makes the problem worse than it has to be. Welcome to Value and Pricing Secrets. My mission here is to help you improve your thinking about how to value and price your offerings. Let's dive more deeply now into market or competitor-based pricing, as it's also known. What are its strengths and what are its shortcomings? And if you're a market-based pricer, what can you do to improve your business performance? Before we move on, let me respectfully ask for your support. My commitment is to bring you world-class value and pricing content on this channel. If you want more, I need you to like, comment, and subscribe. It's the only way YouTube can understand that you value this content and want more of it. When we look at the profit impact of alternative pricing models, market-based pricing is the second best. Better than cost-based pricing, but not as good as value-based pricing. Pricing strategy can drive higher profitability, better customer communications, and improve sales effectiveness. For this video, I want to talk specifically about profitability. These are the data from a specific research study of professional service organizations, but a swath of other studies across a variety of industries show similar results. Profits improve with more sophisticated pricing models. Price is widely regarded as the single most powerful lever to drive profitability. When I was hired to be the VP of pricing, the president of the firm told me my primary task was to drive more profits. Well, if that's the case, why settle for market-based pricing? Why don't all firms shift to value-based pricing? Let's dive a little deeper and find out. As you're probably aware, there are three primary pricing models: cost-based pricing, market-based pricing, and value-based pricing, with outcome-based pricing emerging as a distinct fourth model. So how are these four different? In my experience, each is different in its approach, information required, and rules for success. For a comparative look at the four models, I invite you to look at my comparative models video. There's a link in the description. But let's look at market-based pricing specifically in some detail. To evaluate market-based pricing, we must be specific about the definition. Firms who practice market-based pricing typically exhibit the following behaviors. It's commonly used across many industries, and it works in many cases. In some cases, it is necessary, like in commodity markets. And in other cases, it is misapplied and can be an excuse for bad behavior. The approach is to discover the market price in order to set a competitive price for your offering. In this case, the necessary information is the market price of equivalent offerings. Then the rule for success is to match the market. For example, candy bars sell for $1.29, or at least they are today at the local 7-Eleven. So we need to sell our candy bars at $1.29. Finance and operations work together then to manage the firm to profitability. Finally, this approach to pricing is typically driven by sales, with the thinking that if we match the market price, we won't have to lose sales because of price. On the face of it, market-based pricing makes sense. What could be wrong with matching the market price for your offering? Now let's evaluate market-based pricing in a little greater detail. To evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of the alternative pricing models, we need a framework that is the Value and Pricing Surfboard. And the name is courtesy of my friends at Salesforce, who handed me the moniker during a training session a number of years ago. This framework for understanding pricing models is adapted from work by Dr. Irv Gross, who introduced value-based pricing to DuPont and went on to found the Institute for Study of Business Markets at Penn State. ISBM is the leading business marketing think tank in the world, and a link to ISBM is contained in the description below. So let's walk through the framework. As we look at the surfboard, let's position first our prices and our costs. Price, the difference between price and cost, is the profit margin and are represented in this fashion on the surfboard. Next, I want to introduce the concept of value delivered. For any going concern, if they've been in business for a while, then the value that they deliver to the market must, absolutely must, be higher than the price paid, or customers wouldn't buy their products and services. So we may not know what value delivered exactly is, but we mark that as the top of the surfboard. The difference between the cost of inputs in our business and the value that gets delivered to the market is in fact the economic value that gets created by the firm. Now, any good salesperson will tell you that some of the value is lost. It simply cannot be communicated. Most customers can keep track of maybe 3, 4, 5 things max, attributes of your offering before they lose track of other things. So there's going to be a lot of value that you create for customers, but just will not be acknowledged and recognized and cannot be used for pricing. Now, the difference between your price and your cost, another term for that is value capture. And you've probably heard that term before. The value captured is really the reward that the firm gets for its investments, for its bringing products and services to market. And finally, there's the value distributed. And that's not often talked about, but that is the economic driving force for customers. That's the difference between the price you charge and the value that the customer acknowledges. The greater the value distributed, that is, the higher the value acknowledged, and the greater the difference from the price, the greater the driving force for the customer to buy. To the degree that the value acknowledged and price are close to one another, the driving force for the customer to buy may be somewhat less. Now, this brings me to a final point I want to make. Price is not an endpoint. Price is a variable, a slider, if you will, that you adjust to balance the value captured with the value distributed. The higher your price, the less value distributed, the lower willingness to buy. The lower your price, the greater value distributed, and the greater the willingness to buy. As I mentioned earlier, market-based pricing is an improvement over cost-based pricing, and on average delivers higher margins. It is a strategic pricing approach because it incorporates feedback from the market, competitors, and customers. To set the price, here the price manager's attempts to match the market. The market-based pricer's model makes several big assumptions, though. It assumes that the value delivered is known. It assumes that the value acknowledged is known. And it assumes that the market price is knowable. Think about the case of candy bars I used as an example. You can walk into the 7-Eleven and you have an expectation for what you're going to get in a candy bar. The value is known, it's acknowledged, and all of the candy bars are priced at $1.29. So the market price is knowable. Market-based pricing works best in established markets and markets for simple offerings or commodities. The classic commodity market is pork bellies. As of this writing, pork bellies are priced at $115.09. The value delivered is known. The value acknowledged on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange is acknowledged, and the market price is absolutely knowable. So if you're going to sell pork bellies today, you need to accept $115.09. This is the market-based pricing at its finest. The challenge is more complex offerings. Think back to that professional services study of the 24 companies that I referenced earlier. In that study, the price paid for the job title project manager actually varied by 300% company to company. That is, while some companies sold project managers for $80 an hour, another company could sell them for $240. And before you even think it, the study normalized the job descriptions. So all of the people were doing the same thing. Basically, some firms were simply paid more, 3 times more for exactly the same work. What explains the difference? I think there are 2 big factors. Though there may be others, brand and market segment. Having the option work with some customers, like Microsoft and Nikon, is worth paying a premium price. Also, some customers are willing to pay more because the outcome they receive is worth more. If I can reduce downtime in one plant, my time may be worth $80 an hour. If I can reduce downtime across a dozen plants, then that same customers might be happily pay me $240 and maybe more. If you're in a business that purports to price for the market, then a key question you must ask is, how good is your market price intelligence? In one case, I had a sales force argue that they knew the market and customers and they would not pay more. Market research revealed of the 21 competing firms, their prices were in fact the lowest. Over the next year, they raised their prices by 17% without a single lost sale. The last point I want to make about market-based pricing is the implication for cost management, and I'm going to do that in a very sweet way. Visit your local convenience store and go to the candy aisle. All the candy is $1.29, market pricing at its best. Now look at the weights. Why would Hershey, for example, make the weight 1.45 ounces instead of simply 1 ounce or 1.5 ounces? The answer is cost control. Since the market sets the price, they must control portion size and cost to earn a profit. Market-based pricing puts a burden on finance and operations to pay especially close attention to costs because the market price is perceived as fixed and unchangeable. Now reward yourself with a candy bar for learning this. Unless, of course, you're on a keto diet, then I recommend keto pancakes with pecans sprinkled on top. One of the best very solid books on market strategy is Blue Ocean Strategy. I'll put a link in the description. If you're familiar with it, market-based pricing may be viewed as a response to being in a red ocean environment. Red oceans are typically mature markets with little differentiation, where you as an individual have very little control. In other words, you're surrounded by sharks. Look at the red ocean perspective. You're competing in an existing market space, aka the value is known. Your job has to be to beat the competition because there's only so much demand and either you get it or the competitor gets it. There's no creation of new demand in the marketplace. And the customer has to make a value cost trade-off when making the purchase. Now, if you have a red ocean perspective, then market-based pricing is viewed as a safe bet. You're one of the pack, not causing trouble that might cause you to get eaten. Now, market-based pricing, to understand when it's best applied, let's look at some of the typical environments. Commodity markets, like I said, pork bellies or oil. Mature markets with simple products, like candy. Any market where competitive or peer prices are available or readily researchable, like used cars. Or early in the sales cycle, when a low price incentive is needed. For example, a phone if you're subscribing to a phone services. Now, market-based pricing, what are the key advantages and disadvantages? The advantages are it takes competition and customer perspective into account. Market-based pricing is the initial strategic approach to pricing. Market price information may be readily available from third parties. And so you can actually purchase studies that describe your market and give you some sense of what market prices are. It's easy justification for sales because they can simply say, it's the market price, you should pay it. And it's useful in long sales cycle situations to encourage trial and adoption. What sales will say is that, look, we've got to price low because our competitors are pricing low early on in the sales cycle so that we can get our foot in the door. Disadvantages, of course, are that in many markets, information is sketchy and unreliable, and it mixes apples and oranges. Anecdotal information from sales is particularly problematic, but because it may be accepted as evidence of the market price. Now let me give you an example here. Your salesperson goes and calls on a mom and pop store in the morning. They call on a middle market customer for lunch, and they call on one of your top 3 customers in the middle of the afternoon. Now, what's the market price given the diversity of those customers? Large, powerful customers don't really care about the market price. They want to know what the price is for them. And finally, this market-based pricing destroys the potential value of new offerings, and you may inadvertently start a. So, if you're a market-based pricer, what can you do to improve your performance? Well, first is improve the quality of your market price data and do an analysis of expected or trending market behavior. Understanding your market and understanding the price points is absolutely vital. Number 2, better manage discounting and giveaways. Does sales have broad freedom to negotiate offerings and prices? Often this results in rampant discounting and lost margins. So take a look. Are those discounts and giveaways necessary? How can they be improved? And third, add elements of value-based pricing. For example, segmenting customers with a goal of identifying multiple market price points. Or employ value-based pricing for new offerings where there might be significant upside potential. My mission here is to develop your thinking about valuing and pricing your offerings. I invite you to join me for my mini seminar, The Hidden Power of Value and Pricing. During that seminar, we'll discuss the top pricing problems our clients have come to us to solve, more depth on alternative pricing models, and more detailed strategies for improvement, an introduction to the fundamentals of pricing strategy, proactive price management, and pricing effectiveness through sales. More examples in more depth from some of the world's leading corporations. And the 4 key questions to ask before any pricing decisions you make. Please click on the link in the description below for more information. Thank you. Let me summarize now the key points from our discussion about market-based pricing. The approach really works well for relatively simple offerings where competing options are easily researchable, but really falls apart as offering complexity rises. Number 2, it assumes a red ocean perspective, and so leads managers to devalue innovation and unintentionally trigger price wars. Number 3, market-based pricing does not work well with large, powerful customers. They could care less what the market price is. They want to know what their price is. Number 4, on average, it's better than cost-based pricing. And on average, research has shown that it delivers higher margins. And finally, market-based pricing performance can be improved by investing in better quality information, incorporating elements of value-based pricing, and by better managing discounting through sales.